Welcome everyone. When the sun goes down and the darkness settles over our suburban neighborhoods, we lock our doors thinking we're completely safe. We trust our deadbolts, our security apps, and our smart tech to keep the outside world at bay. But what happens when the threat isn't lurking outside? What if it's already inside your house? What if the very devices you bought for protection turn out to be the trap you can't escape? Tonight, I'm sharing 3 disturbing true horror stories from people who thought they were just having a normal weekend or a routine road trip, only to end up in a living nightmare. Turn off your lights, check your window locks, and get ready, because tonight's stories are going to keep you awake. Story 1. The Lurker in the Log. Our first story comes from Eric, a software engineer who lived in a quiet suburb just outside of Chicago. Back in the winter of 2024, Eric was totally burnt out from his corporate job and decided to book a 1-week digital detox trip. He rented an isolated old Victorian log cabin out in a heavily wooded rural part of Illinois. While the place looked rustic on the outside, the owner had fully renovated the interior into a high-tech smart home. It was equipped with smart locks, motion sensors, and a customized AI voice assistant named Nexa. Before checking in, the host sent Eric a text message that felt a little weird. "Eric, it gets dead quiet out there at night. If Nexa gives any weird alerts or if you think you hear someone on the porch, just keep the doors locked. The house has a bit of history." Eric just brushed it off as typical rural paranoia and didn't think much of it. The first night went smoothly, but on Saturday night, everything changed. Outside, a thick fog had rolled in, and the temperature dropped well below freezing. Around 2:30 a.m., Eric was sitting in his home office working on his laptop. The cabin was completely silent except for the crackle of the fireplace. Suddenly, the smart speaker in the living room broke the silence with a cold, mechanical voice. "Front door unlocked." Eric completely froze. He pulled out his phone and opened the security app. But according to the interface, the deadbolt was still engaged, and the porch camera didn't show any motion. Assuming it was just a software glitch caused by the bad Wi-Fi, he called out, "Nexa, front door status?" The speaker replied, "Front door is locked. Apologies for the internal system error." But the next night, it wasn't just a glitch. Around 3 a.m., Eric was sound asleep when his bedroom TV abruptly blared to life. The screen was just displaying harsh black and white static, and the volume was automatically cranking up to 100%. He practically jumped out of his skin, yelling, "Nexa, turn off the TV." The screen went black and the room plunged back into silence. But a split second later, his phone buzzed. It was a push notification from his security app. "Warning, motion detected in the living room." With his heart pounding in his chest, Eric opened the live camera feed. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of a street lamp outside. The camera didn't show a person, but then Eric noticed something that made his blood run cold. The heavy, 3-seater sofa was slowly, incrementally sliding across the hardwood floor. It looked exactly like someone was standing behind it, pushing it toward the wall. The microphone on the camera picked up the distinct sound of wood scraping against wood. Then the blue light on the smart speaker flashed. But it wasn't Nexa's voice. Instead, a raspy, trembling whisper of an old woman echoed through the speakers. "She doesn't want these machines here. This is my house." Panic completely set in. Eric threw off his blankets and ran toward the bedroom door. But the moment he grabbed the handle, every smart bulb in the house flashed a deep, emergency red. Nexa's voice started blaring through every speaker at maximum volume. "Warning, unknown user in the system. Emergency lockdown activated." The smart locks throughout the cabin began rapidly clicking open and closed over and over again, creating a deafening rhythm. Eric twisted the bedroom doorknob, but the smart lock had deadbolted itself from the outside. He was trapped inside his own room. Suddenly, his phone screen lit up again. The app had automatically forced open the live feed from the basement camera. Down there, right next to the breaker box and the router, someone was standing. It was an elderly woman wearing a stained, tattered nightgown. Her back was to the camera, and her hair was matted. Eric later found out that the previous owner of the house had been an eccentric elderly woman who despised technology and had died completely alone in that house. In the video, the woman was holding a heavy, rusty woodcutting axe. Suddenly, she jerked her head around and stared directly into the camera lens. Her eyes were completely black, no pupils, just empty voids. Right at that exact moment, her voice came through the speaker in Eric's bedroom. "No tech is going to save you now, Eric." She swung the axe directly into the main power lines. The video feed cut to black, the lights went out, and the entire house was plunged into pitch darkness. Eric was standing alone in the dark. The cabin was dead silent, but not for long. From downstairs, he heard the heavy basement door creak open. Then came the footsteps up the wooden stairs. They were slow and heavy, and with every step, there was the unmistakable sound of metal dragging against the wood. Scratch. 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 The woman was dragging the axe straight toward his bedroom. Knowing he had seconds to live, Eric grabbed a heavy metal desk lamp and threw it through the glass window. It shattered completely. Without even putting on shoes, he jumped out of the first-floor window, landing hard in the freezing snow. His ankle twisted badly, but the adrenaline kept him moving. He dragged himself through the snow toward the main road where, by sheer luck, a neighbor driving early to work spotted him. He pulled Eric into the car and dialed 911. When the county sheriff's deputies arrived, the cabin was empty. But the basement wires were completely hacked to pieces, and a decades-old rusty axe was left lying on the floor. Eric sold the property the very next day. To this day, he refuses to stay anywhere that uses smart home technology. Story 2. The Amber Alert on Highway 101. Our second story comes from Ryan, a college student who was driving home from California to Oregon through the dense redwood forests. He decided to drive through the night to avoid the traffic, but it turned out to be the worst decision of his life. It was roughly 1:45 a.m. Highway 101 was completely deserted. A thick, heavy fog had rolled in from the Pacific, cutting the visibility down to just a few feet in front of his headlights. He hadn't seen another car in miles, and his phone service had completely dropped out 30 minutes prior. That's when Ryan noticed his gas lights start blinking. He was running on fumes in the middle of nowhere. If his car died out here, nobody would find him for hours. Just as panic started to set in, he saw a dim yellow neon light glowing through the fog. It was an old, run-down wooden gas station with a small convenience store. The sign read, "Open 24 hours." Breathing a sigh of relief, Ryan pulled up to the pump. The moment he turned off the engine, a heavy, oppressive silence hit the car. Standing by the pump was an old man wearing a tattered leather jacket, his face completely shadowed by a large cowboy hat. He was standing perfectly still, like a mannequin. Ryan rolled down his window and said, "Hey buddy, can you fill it up? Do you guys take card?" The man didn't say a word. He slowly raised his head, and when the light caught his face, Ryan's stomach dropped. The man's skin was incredibly pale, dry, and sunken in, almost like a mummy. Without making eye contact, he grabbed the nozzle and started pumping the gas with slow, robotic movements. Feeling deeply uneasy, Ryan decided to step inside the store to grab a hot coffee. As he pushed open the glass door, a rusty bell chimed, ding ding. The air inside the store smelled like damp wood and rotting paper. Sitting behind the counter was an elderly woman in a faded sweater. Her eyes were wide open, staring blankly at the wall in front of her. She didn't even turn her head when Ryan walked in. Trying to ignore the creepy vibe, Ryan went to the back, poured a cup of coffee, and walked up to the register. As he reached for his wallet, his eyes caught a small, dusty black and white TV sitting behind the counter. It was playing a local news broadcast, displaying the mugshots of an elderly man and woman. The headline text running across the bottom read, 60 years ago today, the owners of the historic Highway 101 gas station were brutally murdered by an unknown drifter. The bodies were never recovered. The case remains unsolved. Ryan froze. He looked closer at the photos on the screen. They were the exact same people. The man outside and the woman sitting right in front of him. His heart started hammering against his ribs. He quietly set his cash on the counter and began backing away toward the exit. But when he grabbed the handle of the glass door and pulled, it wouldn't budge. It was padlocked from the outside. Suddenly, a loud popping sound came from behind the counter, the sound of bones cracking. Ryan slowly turned around. The old woman was no longer sitting. She had climbed onto the counter and was crawling over it on all fours, moving like a giant spider. Her neck was bent at an unnatural angle, and when she opened her mouth, there were no teeth, just a dark void dripping with black fluid. She whispered in a raspy voice, "Don't leave so soon, honey. We don't get many visitors out here. You're staying with us." Pure survival instinct took over. Ryan grabbed a heavy metal trash can next to the counter and hurled it into the front glass window. The glass shattered. Ryan dived through the broken window, cutting his arms and face, but he didn't care. He scrambled to his feet and ran outside, only to find a worse nightmare waiting. The old man wasn't pumping gas anymore. He had dropped the nozzle, and in his hand was a large, rusty hacksaw. He was moving with terrifying speed, sawing through Ryan's rear tires. The moment the creature saw Ryan, his hat fell off, revealing a face that was partially decayed. He raised the saw and sprinted directly at him. Ryan yanked open the driver's side door, threw himself inside, locked it, and slammed the keys into the ignition. The engine roared to life. He threw the car into reverse, slamming the gas pedal to the floor just as the old man lunged at the windshield. Because the rear tires were completely shredded, the car was running purely on the metal rims. Bright sparks flew in every direction, creating a deafening screech on the asphalt, but Ryan didn't stop. He looked in his rearview mirror and saw the two figures standing in the middle of the dark highway, slowly waving goodbye through the fog. Ryan drove for about 7 miles on raw rims until the axle snapped, sending his car crashing into a ditch. Fortunately, a state trooper patrolling the highway spotted the wreckage a few minutes later. When Ryan hysterically told the trooper what happened, the officer called for backup and they drove back to the coordinates. But when they arrived, Ryan gasped. There was no open gas station. There was only a 60-year-old burnt-out wooden ruin, completely overgrown with wild vines and bushes. There were no lights, no pumps, and no power. But on the pavement, the fresh gouges from Ryan's metal rims and the shattered glass proved that everything that had happened was completely real. The trooper looked at Ryan and said, "Son, you're incredibly lucky. Over the last 40 years, at least 15 travelers have gone missing on this stretch of highway. And their cars were always found abandoned right next to these ruins." Story 3. The Appalachian Skinwalker. Our third and final story takes us into the heart of America's most mysterious and dread-inducing landscapes, the Appalachian Mountains. This story comes from a young woman named Julie, who rented a remote log cabin deep in the woods of Maryland for a weekend getaway. The Appalachian region is infamous for its deep woods and centuries-old urban legends. Locals know that these mountains hold secrets, and some things lurking in the deep brush are definitely not human. Julie's cabin was located 8 miles down an unpaved logging road. There were no neighbors, no cellular service, and the cabin ran entirely on an outdoor generator. The host had left a laminated note on the fridge with a bizarre rule: keep all window curtains drawn after 8 p.m. If you hear someone outside calling your name, or if you hear the voice of a loved one in the woods, do not look out and do not answer. It was Saturday night, and a brutal blizzard had blanketed the entire forest in white. Around 1:45 a.m., Julie woke up to a scratching sound against the external wooden wall of the cabin. Scratch, scratch, scratch. She sat up in bed, listening intently. Suddenly, the scratching stopped, and she heard the heavy sound of footsteps crunching in the deep snow outside. Crunch, crunch, crunch. They weren't the steps of a 4-legged animal, they were distinctly bipedal. Summoning her courage, Julie grabbed her flashlight and crept into the living room. She peeled back the edge of the heavy curtain and shone the beam down into the snow. The blizzard made it hard to see, but when the light hit the ground directly beneath the window, her heart stopped. There were massive, fresh footprints in the snow, but they weren't boots. They were bare human feet, except the toes were incredibly long and claw-like, and the print was twice the size of a normal human foot. No human could survive barefoot in a negative 10-degree blizzard. Terrified, Julie tried to calm herself down. She walked over to the Amazon Echo speaker on the table and said, "Alexa, play some relaxing music." But the response she got made her blood run cold. The speaker lit up blue and Alexa's voice said, "Internet connection is lost. But someone outside the cabin wants to talk to you." Before Julie could even process what she heard, the speaker began emitting heavy, distorted static. And out of that white noise, a voice began to whisper. It was a voice Julie recognized instantly. It was her own voice. It sounded exactly like a recording of her, matching her tone and inflection perfectly. Her own voice came out of the speaker saying, "Julie, it's so cold out here. Please open the door. Let me in." Julie realized she was dealing with a mimic, or what the locals call a skinwalker, a malevolent entity that steals the voices of humans to lure its prey into the dark. Suddenly, the outdoor generator sputtered and died. The entire cabin went pitch black, except for the dying red embers of the fireplace. Then a new sound echoed through the cabin. It came from directly above her head. The cabin had a small loft storage area accessible by a wooden ladder. From the ceiling, she heard the old wooden floorboards creaking. Creak, creak, creak. Whatever it was already inside the house. With trembling hands, Julie turned on her flashlight and aimed the beam up the ladder. Standing at the top of the stairs, crouching in the shadows, was a creature with 2 large, glowing yellow eyes. The entity was impossibly tall and emaciated, its skin a pale ash gray color. Its fingers ended in 6-inch razor-sharp claws. When the light hit its face, it unhinged its jaw, opening its mouth far wider than any human could, and screamed at her in her own voice, "Julie, don't run. It's just me." Julie didn't hesitate. She threw open the front door and ran out into the raging blizzard, wearing nothing but her socks. Behind her, a horrific metallic shriek echoed from the cabin. She sprinted through the blinding snow for 3 agonizing miles, driven purely by the fear of death, until she finally flagged down a state police cruiser patrolling the county road at 4 a.m. The next day, Julie returned with a team of state troopers to gather her belongings. In the daylight, the cabin looked serene. But when the police inspected the loft, they found Julie's name, Juli, scrawled across the ceiling in fresh blood. The Amazon Echo on the table was completely melted, as if scorched by extreme heat. But the most terrifying detail was the footprints outside. The tracks in the snow didn't lead away from the cabin. They led straight from the woods into the back door and stopped inside the house. The entity had never left. Those are 3 true horror stories that prove the world is a much darker place than we think. They remind us that no matter how much tech we have, or how safe we feel, there are things lurking out there that we cannot comprehend. The next time you driving down a dark highway and your gas light turns on, or you staying in an isolated cabin and you hear a familiar voice calling your name from the dark, remember that sometimes keeping the door locked is the only way to stay alive. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to hit that like button, share this video with a friend, and subscribe to the channel for more true horror. Let me know in the comments which story crept you out the most. Stay safe, lock your doors. And good night. Good night.